and welcome back. This is Mrs. Smith reading Indians of the Oaks by Melicent. I'm on part 2. This is chapter 9. An old woman hides her nuts. At dawn the next morning, little Wasp ran up the rocks and bathed in the stone room. The early sun shone in through the doorway. She played happily in the sunny water. When she was walking down the trail to her camp after climbing down the rocks, she met an old Indian man digging a pit with a sharp stick. "Why are you digging a pit?" she asked. The old man pointed to a pile of sticky green pinyon cones. "I'm going to put these cones in it," he answered. "This is the way to cook unripe nuts." Wah sat down on the ground and watched him. He made a very deep round pit. He smoothed it out until it was clean and nice. Then he kindled a fire in it. When the fire had died down, he scraped away the ashes, threw dust on the sticky cones, and laid them neatly in the pit. Then he covered them with earth and scraped the ground smooth. One would hardly know that anything had been buried there. "How long will it take to roast them?" asked Was, as the old man smoothed the earth. "Not very long," answered the old man. "While you're eating breakfast they will roast." Was had forgotten all about her breakfast. She ran back to her pinyon tree. Her mother had already left the camp for her nut gathering. She had covered the fire with ashes. By the side of the fire, wrapped in a leaf, was a quail. Wasp guessed that it was a present to her mother from the brother of the Yuma cousin. She guessed that her mother had left it for her. She roasted it over the flame. After her breakfast of quail, she ran back to the old man. He was just beginning to uncover the cones. Wasp wondered what they would look like. They had been roasted a light brown. Wasp picked one out of the pile. Ouch! It was so hot that she dropped it. "I will wait until it is cool," she said to the old man. "If you wait until it is cool, it'll close up again and you cannot get the seeds out. You must get them out while it's hot. Work quickly, see?" The old man took a hot cone, quickly opened it with his fingers, and showed Wasp many brown seeds lying in pairs. Wasp picked up a cone, and after dropping it twice because it was so hot, opened it and found the seeds. She discovered that she could jerk the cone open swiftly and the seeds would fly out. That was better than digging them out with her fingernails. "Now these are already roasted," said the old man. "We shall not have to parch them over a fire." "Why don't you always prepare them this way?" asked Wasp. "Because they do not taste so well when they are ripe," he said. "I'm going to look for the ripe ones now." So saying, he covered the cones with dust to keep them hot and walked away. While Wasp stood quietly watching him go, an old woman passed her. The old woman carried a deerskin sack on her shoulder. She was walking on a trail which led up a little hill through a growth of juniper bushes. Wasp secretly followed the old woman. She followed her up the hill, over a pile of rocks, and into a cave. She peeked into the cave and saw the old woman dump her sackful of pinyon nuts into a tall hollow which stood on the ledge of a rock. Before the old woman had time to turn around in the cave, Wasp had slipped away. She ran quickly to her mother, who was just starting to climb a tree. "An old woman is hiding her pinyon nuts in a cave," she cried. "Hush, hush," said her mother. "Hush! What you know, do not tell. What you tell, do not know. Never follow anybody again. Should you like to have anybody follow you, keep to your own trail." Wasp felt very ashamed, but she couldn't help thinking about the old woman. Why was she hiding her nuts in a cave so far from home? What good were some hidden nuts going to do her? Just then she saw the old woman returning, carrying an empty sack. "Who is that old woman?" asked Wasp, turning to a young Indian man who was sitting under a tree fastening feathers into a new arrow. "That is Lys," answered the Indian. "Where does she live?" "She lives here," said the young Indian. He pointed to a little hut at the edge of the brush. Wasp didn't say anything, but she guessed now that the old woman had a reason for storing nuts in her own backyard. All day, all during the day, Wasp helped her mother to gather pinyon seeds. Toward noon, the sun was so hot that she sat under the low branches of the tree. Many brown nuts were scattered among the tiny needle-like leaves. "We will pick up these nuts right here," said her mother, taking off the basket cap and sitting down beside her little daughter. "This is the slow way, but it is better than no way at all." She had done enough tree climbing for a while. Patiently they gathered the nuts one by one, one by one. Wasp gathered almost a basketful when her mother suddenly noticed what she was doing. "You're picking up some old nuts with the new," she said. "Do you see these dark brown nuts? They are good. Do you see the pale nuts? They are not good. They're too old." She pressed a pale nut between her fingers, and out popped dust. "The brown nut feels heavier than the light-colored one," said the herb woman, "and there is another sure way to tell." She gathered up a handful of nuts, held them in the palm of her hand, and blew lightly upon them. About half of them blew away. "Those that stay in the palm are good," she said. "Those are too heavy to blow away." "I think all that blowing takes too long," said Was. "You will not need to do that after a while," replied her mother. "You'll pick up the good ones without half looking. You'll learn to do that quickly." It took a long time to pick up the little nuts one by one when they were scattered thinly over the ground. It was easier to gather them when they were in a pile, after they had been beaten out by a stick. Was ate every other nut she picked up, even though they were not roasted. It was fun to do this because she could never eat acorn meats until the bitterness had been taken out. She happened to move around to the side of the tree where the sun could creep up under the boughs. She picked up some more nuts. She tasted one. It was hot. It tasted exactly like it had been roasted. "These nuts have been roasted!" she cried to her mother. "They've been roasted by the sun," said her mother. "There are more ways of cooking than cooking by fire." "I think cooking is interesting," said Wasp. "When I'm a grown up, I'm going to learn many secrets about it." "Do not wait till you're a grown up," said her mother. They picked the nuts until supper time. While they were making their supper fire, her mother said, "We will toast some of our nuts now. I can hardly wait to eat them. Sometimes I don't eat another thing but nuts when I'm in the Pinyon country." Was carried a basket full of nuts to the fire. The herb woman poured them into a cooking olla and set the olla on the 3 rocks grouped under the little fire, around the little fire. She stirred the nuts constantly with her oak spoon. "You do it," she said to little Was. Was took the stick and stirred the nuts. The smoke of the fire blew straight into her eyes, but she was used to smoke. "You're not stirring quickly enough," said the herb woman. "Quickly, or they will burn." Was stirred them as fast as she could. "Pop!" sang one. "Pop!" sang another. "Pop!" "They're jumping out of the olla," cried little Was. Soon we shall have none left." "They're moist," said her mother. "That is why they pop." She clapped a shallow clay dish over them to keep them in their little hot house. Then she held the small cooking olla with a leaf and shook it quickly. "Now I guess they're done," she said. Was uncovered the olla. There were the little nuts toasted to a deep, cheerful brown. She let them cool off a bit. Then she picked up one, cracked it with her teeth, and ate it, spitting out the thin brown shell. The meat inside was the color of cream. "Hun," she said, "this is the best nut that I've ever tasted. It's not like the acorn. It's already sweet." "Yes, it's already sweet," said her mother. "We have nothing to do but toast the nuts, and they are ready to eat. But we can make dry meal out of them if we wish. And then we can eat a handful at a time. Some people like them that way best." Little Wasp wanted to make the meal that very moment. "Shall we cook it then, like the acorn meal?" she asked. "Of course not," said her mother. "These nuts have already been cooked. There are more ways of cooking than boiling or roasting. Toasting is one of the best ways of cooking." "Oh!" cried Was. They, she would be happy when she learned the wisdom of her mother. "How do we make the meal?" asked the little girl. Her mother said nothing. Instead, she walked to a tree near them, put her hand into a hiding place under the roots, and dragged out a heavy metate and a round rubbing stone. She poured some of the nuts upon the metate and ground them up with her stone. "Now hand me my winnowing basket," she said to Was. The herb woman scraped the meal into her winnowing basket and winnowed away the brown husks. When the meal was clean, she tasted it. "Hun," she said, "it is good. It is sweet and rich and good. Who could wish for better food?" "No one," said little Was as she tasted the meal. "It is good, but I think I like the nuts better when they're not ground into meal." "So do I," said her mother, smiling. "We shall not grind our nuts. Let the old people grind theirs. Then they will not have to crack the shells with their teeth they haven't got." Was felt very happy. She had learned 4 ways of preparing pinyon nuts. One way was to beat the seeds out of the cones and toast them. Another way was to roast the green cones in a pit and open them up when they were hot. The Indians could come early into the pinyon country and do this before the nuts were ripe. Another way was to pick the seeds off the ground and toast them. And still another way was to grind the toasted seeds into meal. "I shouldn't be surprised if there were still other ways," thought Was. Someday I will try to find out for myself. I like to find out things for myself best. I should like to be the herb woman like my mother. I should like to spend my days discovering medicines and good food for people. This has been a long day, said the herb woman as she lay down in a warm spot in her little shelter. The brother of the Yuma cousin had made them a tiny hut. A long day, but a happy one. All days are happy to me, said little Was as she snuggled under the long hair of her mother. All right, that was chapter 9. Join me next time for chapter 10.